Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Optimizing Your Success. I have, again, an incredible panel of extreme high achievers, and we're going to talk a lot about innovation and how innovation happened out of the government, out of a place you would not have expected it to happen, and happen so quickly, and their rise to fame. And we're going to talk about that fame all within 3 years. They did all of this very differently than what we're used to. But the lesson I have learned from all of this is that if it can be done in the mammoth machine, which is in the government, we can do it within our own organizations, our own businesses, and our own lives. And we're really here to pick up all of those tips. Now, a lot of this can be found, a lot of the information that we're going to talk about today can be found in this new book, The Experiment That Succeeded, by Dr. Brian Beam Mao. So I want you to check this book out. We're going to be talking a lot about it because there's a lot of great stuff there. And there is some of my favorite graphics. And you know that I've trained in adult learning, and some of the graphics in this book are probably some of the best that I have ever seen. We're going to do a big round robin of introductions so that you can meet everyone. And I am really excited to really bring in today's guest. So today, I want to first start with the woman who introduced me to today's guest, JJ Snow.
Hi, Ruth. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be fun. I am currently the AFWorks Chief Technology Officer, and I am really honored to be here with Beam, who actually convinced me to come up to AFWorks and join their amazing team. And I met him when he was founding AFWorks before it became the top 16 of best 100 in the world places for innovators to work. So a big fan and just delighted to be here for the show.
Thank you. And, I always say that the way that we learn new things is by hearing other people's perspective and getting people within our network to introduce us to interesting people. Just right before this, I gave a talk, and I actually talked about Janice and how Janice's conversation with a taxi driver in London led to all the work that she's doing in the United States and the rest of the world. And your introduction that I can meet Beam led to everything that we are doing today in the review I hope to cover of this amazing book. Mm-hmm. So JJ, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm going to tell you a little bit later about why Beam stands out to me from all of the other people who I've interviewed. Someone else who has worked closely with Beam, Tina Parker.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. And my dog, Winnie, who has decided to join us at the opportune time. So I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer for the Mentor Project, along with JJ, who's the Chief Technology Officer with us as well. And I was the Marketing Director with Beam and JJ and AFWorks for a while also. I'm also the founder and CEO of Lead Outside the Lines Transformational Coaching, and just super excited to be here with you guys to bring up Beam's book because it is pretty incredible.
Thank you. And Tina, remind everyone, who is it that you coach?
I coach professional women on transformational life and leadership so that they can show up courageously, authentic, and be confident in what they're doing.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks.
And our latest official mentor within the Mentor Project, our favorite Olympian, Devin Harris.
Oh, that's me? Oh, always. Thank you, Ruth. Always great to be able to hang out with you guys. I miss you guys.
We missed you too.
Spending time with these amazing leaders and thinkers. Devin Harris, 3-time Olympian, founding member of the Jamaican bobsled team, motivational speaker, author, philanthropist, and now newest member of the Mentor Project. Yes, things are looking good.
We love having you here and having your perspective. Thank you, Devin.
Absolutely.
Janice Lintz.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Lintz. I'm CEO of Hearing Access and Innovations. I'm trying to change the world for people with hearing loss to make it accessible and to make hearing aids affordable to everyone. In addition, I'm traveling to every country in the world.
And Janice and I, fun fact, we actually got to meet in person yesterday. After a year and a half of these virtual meetings, hundreds and hundreds of hours on Zoom, we actually got to meet face to face. And we felt like we'd known each other, and I guess we have. So
it was actually
Janice,
really strange.
so
I've never been
awesome.
such good friends with someone that like I hadn't met in person because of the pandemic. It was really super strange.
It was strange and so fun.
We still haven't met JJ in person and Bruce.
That's
right?
right.
That we've had numerous conversations, so we'll have to do that as well.
I saw Bruce. I think we passed in hallways at conferences.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
Bruce Wiley, Dr. Bruce Wiley.
I'm actually not a real person, but an avatar. So,
but
yes. My name is Bruce Wiley. I'm writer, journalist, professor, computer modeler, and today is National Daiquiri Day, and it's also National Get Out of the Doghouse Day.
So you're the one who let the dogs out? Is that what we're learning?
I've had the answer all this time. Whenever that plays, I say, "Yep."
That's it.
Chris has met his match. Oh my goodness, we're gonna have a volleyball game here today.
This is gonna be awesome. So everyone who watches us regularly knows that Bruce and I both write for Forbes, but Bruce is much more of a comedic writer than I am. And we challenge him every week that if there is a word from our show, we challenge him to insert that in one of his upcoming articles in Forbes. So we're waiting for, last week it was Avatar. We're still waiting for that. We'll see what comes up from this week. You guys can put it in the chat and we'll see what comes up at the end. And by all means, if you have questions for anyone here, just put it in the chat and we will ask everyone and hopefully get that answered live. All right, Bean, you're up next with my favorite graphic behind you.
Well, greetings, dear slayer of the Velcro dragon, as well as builder of the Teflon armor. I am honored to be here in the Mentor Project because tonight, along with JJ and Tina, we're going to be able to talk about how we were mentored by 7,000 years of history or historical tales, and how we took a government innovation idea for the Air Force, labeled AFWorks. We transformed a Pentagon idea into, as Tina has said, as JJ has said, the number 16, the organization named number 16 in the world as the best workplace for innovators by Fast Company in 2020 out of 865 organizations that were reviewed. And so tonight is fantastic because we get to do precisely what it is that makes democracy so great. We get to take all these different ideas, all this different data and information and put it together and try and create impact because, again, borrowing from history, let's take Joseph Schumpeter with from the economist side of the house, that yes, economists can say something nice and positive sometimes. He was the guy who said, hey, you know, a lot of organizations have labor, a lot of organizations have capital. Okay, we've got people and money. Well, why do some organizations succeed while others fail? And so I'm really excited tonight, Ruth, that we get to talk about some of those things, whether it's our flow model, factors linking organizational will, or any other questions you'd like to know about that 3-year journey. And JJ and Tina have got great things to support from their contributions as well. So really excited for tonight.
I am so excited. Now, before we get started with this, I want to say everyone knows I read a lot. I read 70 to 100 books a year, and people are always sending me things and sending me press kits of books that they want me to cover and read and cover. But never have I received a bespoke press kit where someone takes their work and aligns it with my work with extreme high achievers and shows me how their work perfectly fits into the categories that I described, plus did all of the research to know about all the other things in adult learning that I talk about, hence the comments about Velcro and Teflon that he was talking about. So Beam, you did your homework. And I have to tell you, when someone does their homework to that degree, I have to pay attention because I know that this is going to be amazing. So everyone listening and watching on the podcast that comes out in a few days, this is going to be amazing. So buckle up. All right, Beam, you got a mission. And that mission was drive innovation to secure our future. Tell us that story. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, great. So 2017, new Air Force leadership takes over. Secretary Wilson, General Goldfein, and they put out those 5 strategic priorities for the Air Force that you just talked about, Ruth. Priority number 3 was drive innovation to secure our future. And so AFWorks was created to be an Air Force innovation organization that would capitalize on collaborations between businesses and industry and research institutions and government. How are we going to put all that together? How do you drive innovation to secure the future in an unknown and uncertain future? So we looked around, and there wasn't any particular model that really fit this and in government approach and environment that we were going to work with. So we really had to start by taking some of the best that was out there. And I would usually start with like Cotter from the West. I really liked Cotter's Leading Change. And from the East, I really like Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, because what you have behind me here is a picture of my hike through the Grand Canyon earlier in the spring. And I think about Thomas Hobbes and Leviathan, where he said, life outside of civilization out there is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And so for that reason, we come together with friends, family, tribes, organizations, because we know that our environment is filled with threats and opportunities. So the Air Force says, and I'll jump to this quickly because I don't want to take up too much time, but the big overview is there's a global competition out there in our environment. The 2 major players are dictators and democracies. The dictators have an asymmetric advantage of unity of effort. If they say this is the year that your family gets to have 1 child, you have 1 child. 3 children, you get 3 children. I need 2,000 quantum physicists in 10 years. Incentives and disincentives will occur so that those 2,000 people show up. Over here, though, on the democracy side, and why the Mentor Project is so cool, is because our asymmetric advantage is like 180 from unity of effort. We have competitive, diverse thoughts and actions that we're trying to put together. So when the democracies are able to put their competitive best of breed thoughts and actions together, we do some amazing things. How do you capture that in peacetime? We developed what we called the factors linking organizational will, your willpower, what's going to drive you, what's going to make it happen. And the outer ring, the very beginning ring, is the environment. Again, taking us back to Hobbes, or you could work your way up from Maslow. If you're dropped in the jungle, you have to get over some initial environmental things or you're not even going to make it. The next layer in is the response to the environment, and that's mission and strategy. The reason this is so important and that we distinguish it from culture is because there are cliches and, some good bumper stickers out there. Some people say culture eats strategy for breakfast. But if you don't look at the environment, environment's going to eat both of those by the time brunch comes around. Example, how many people here are old enough to remember when you had to go to a Blockbuster Video to rent a DVD or a VHS tape? Do we remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So imagine you have the greatest, so reductionism, maybe too much reductionism, you have the greatest store manager and Blockbuster of all time. She knocks it out of the park. Her employees love her. They would work overtime for free. She's so amazing. Customers will come from 10 extra miles to come to this one particular Blockbuster. It's the top producing Blockbuster in America. Go strategy, go mission. And then streaming video comes along. And despite having a great mission, strategy, culture in the store, they're wiped out. And so it is troubling sometimes, and particularly a challenge in the military. This is where I need to break. I am still a government employee. All of the thoughts that you're hearing from Beam this evening are his own reflections by himself. They are not representative of the Department of Defense or any government agency. Break. The very fact that I had to say that should tell you some idea of the environment that we had to work in. But going back to the main point, Blockbuster proves that you can have the greatest leaders, greatest strategy, mission, and culture, but if you aren't paying attention to the environment, it is not long for the world. So those are the opening 3 factors that we considered within our flow model, the factors linking organizational will, Ruth, and I'll pause there for questions or reflections.
So what do you guys think of that? that Blockbuster is such a classic example. And of course, we also have BlackBerry and we have Kodak, all the same types of understanding. Now, tell me how all of you guys with your military background, how did you understand this whole business of the environment and the mission and strategy and culture? I mean, I have a business and adult learning background, so it's very clear to me. But how do people who don't have that background, how did you pick up on that?
I think I want to actually pick on Tina for a minute, who actually earned the nickname WAG for widely attended gathering, because that is a policy and legal term within the environment that she and I spent, we'll say weeks, and I'm going to be generous and conservative, trying to advance innovation for the Air Force. Over to you a little bit, WAG.
Oh, you need to change your name in there. I want a nickname.
Tina WAG Parker. No. Yes. So there is policy when you have a large gathering of people within the Air Force, within the government. And for us to do things differently, like that was what we were charged to do in AFWorks, was bring people together from all different facets of life, right? Your garage tinkerer to your 4-star general, right? Just bring them in the same room and have everybody collaborate and bring up these amazing ideas and go, what about this? What about that? I didn't think about it. And so in order to do that, we needed to create a space where everyone felt welcomed and could stay in that environment, not have to go off and get food and get whatever, so we could always just be there. We were charged with doing things in a different way, so we did. And when you're charged with doing things in a very colorful way, in what I would call a black and white environment, the folks that are very embedded in that black and white environment don't always see the need for doing things in a colorful way. And so it did take us quite a while to go through the policy, to explain why we did certain things the way we did. And to some degree, some of that is still going on, but it's okay, because why we had to do that was so that we could get to where we are now. And that's breaking barriers with innovation in the government.
You know why people do that? You know why the black and white people don't follow suit and aren't excited about it and actually double down? Do you know why they do that?
They're afraid and they're holding on to their security and their job. That's my take on it.
That's exactly right. It's afraid of losing power. No, it's true. That's exactly true. They're afraid of losing what they have, which could be power, which could be their job, which could be the security. That's why they do it. So you very, very often, if you can secure them with that, they're more likely to change.
Yeah, certainty.
They'll secure. Devin, say it again.
No, certainty. They want certainty.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious, guys, because in the military, that is, standard operational procedures. This is how we operate. What was the biggest challenge? And I commend the Air Force, by the way, for even thinking out of the box in the beginning to bring you guys together. But as you got your work started, what would you say was the biggest challenge in breaking through that black and white world? This is how we do things, and you don't deviate. These are the SOPs.
So Olympian, let me follow up by saying if Tina Parker were in the Olympics, it would be the Summer Olympics, and she would have been the javelin catcher, because the number of things that were thrown at her as she was trying to advance it was impressive. And JJ, they wouldn't even be able to name her event, because JJ, can you write down your job description, please, in a way that the Air Force will accept?
No.
It was a decathlon. It was a decathlon.
It's like the best description I've been able to come up with has been I'm a universal translator between government and geek. That's the best, but that doesn't translate into government speak very well.
Yeah.
And ultimate collaborator too, which doesn't always go over so well. But the folks that's the thing, the folks that are hungry for new ideas and to do something different, they're all over it. They just came in droves to be a part of this. And that was in large part due to the environment that Beam created along with the team.
I love it. Thank you. And Mark Rowland, we see you and we thank you for your shout out. The team appreciates it as well.
I will say I had a great experience working with the Pentagon, which I think JJ does. Frankly, I don't think we've ever discussed this, it just occurred to me. But I worked with the Pentagon to make the USS Intrepid, there may be one less S, Intrepid, accessible for people with hearing loss. And when I couldn't get help with the Smithsonian, and one of the things that they claimed was that there was too much steel in the Smithsonian, so they couldn't make it accessible. I decided if I worked with a museum that was built out of a ship, you couldn't get any more steel than a ship. And I couldn't get assistance because there were some corruption issues going on and embezzlement issues going on. So I went to the Pentagon, and I found the Pentagon really helpful, and they understood what I was going to do, of why I needed to go to the Pentagon to disrupt the Smithsonian and create a strategy. And they basically told the Intrepid that if they didn't add the hearing access, they were going to pull the space shuttle. And so, yeah, that was crazy, because imagine this mother going to the Pentagon, right? And suddenly a museum's about to lose their space shuttle. And the person who was blocking me apparently got indicted for embezzlement at the Intrepid, right? So there's all this going on. And the Pentagon was great, because they said that once the museum added the access for the space shuttle, they wouldn't be able to say they couldn't add the access for the rest of the museum. I was like, wow, you guys really do know something about strategy. Wow, that's quite brilliant. And sure enough, the Intrepid is now one of the most accessible museums in the country. But it was amazing. I mean, I found the people at the Pentagon were super helpful to me. And it was the second time, because I worked with them at the Dayton Aviation Center.
Excellent.
See, this is why I tell you that I'm happy that Janice and I are friends, because I would never want to cross her, because she's always going to win.
No, I don't.
Because she doesn't relent. She doesn't
always
relent.
Win. I would wish that was true.
Oh, you win on what's important. Beam, let's continue. Take us to the next phase.
Okay. Just to round out with Devin, if I may, for a second. Devin, the biggest challenge is from very well-intentioned people who in the government are saying, we owe the American taxpayers an answer to where their money is going. So if you're going to start an innovation group and you can't declare, because budgets are declared anywhere from 1 to 2 years out, so that our Congress can mark it up accordingly, it's just a product of the system. It's very challenging at times to say, hey, we're going to go do innovation. Well, what are you going to produce? Well, it's going to be something useful to the warfighter. Well, what does that look like? And it becomes a lot of people get nervous real quickly. You want to hold an event for what? Where the outcome is going to be uncertain, and the amount of the desire for certainty out of goodwill, because they want to be able to say to the American taxpayer, we took good care, we were good stewards with your money. But there is an inherent resistance from the very beginning that says, why would I want to add uncertainty to my job description or to my annual performance by doing this innovation thing that doesn't quite make sense to me, because you're not even giving me a future? How can I work with that? Right? So for us, part of the challenge was just good messaging, which again, you could look at North Korea or South Korea at night. This goes along well within our military environment, and it seems to be working well with the different civilian populations that we've talked to since. When you look at a picture at night for North Korea and South Korea, what you have is essentially, bluntly, a natural experiment that says a fairly similar group of people were split by an exogenous event, the terrors of war, and they were put under two different systems. Again, in the North, you have the unity of effort dictatorship. In the South, you have the competition of ideas, where there are winners and losers. There's arguments about ideas all the time. 75 plus years passes between these two different cultures, governance, structures, and systems. Which one do you think looks more productive at night? So this is usually a nice one. Another one from the Cold War comes to us from East Berlin, West Berlin. Again, Berlin was split, relatively similar group of people after the war. But during the Cold War years then, West Berlin, the democratic democracies, East Berlin, the dictatorship of the Soviet Union, no less than Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan in the book Democracy. Oh, sorry, that's Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America. Greenspan's book is Capitalism in America, taken from that term, I suspect. He points out that West Berlin was recorded as being 3 times more productive than the dictatorship communist system. So coming up with good context, tangible stories versus, well, we're going to do innovation. You need to be able to say what it is you're trying to get after, even if you can't specify it. Being able to give concrete answers is a great start. And then just completing our model for the overview, the specifics are not as important as the very fact of, for those of you who have to lead your organizations, it was Jason Corman of the Gaping Void Culture Design Group who was giving a speech, and I was listening to him, and he asked the question, if I were to pull 5 people from your organization and interview them independently and say, would you please describe for me your culture? How close do you think those 5 articulations would be? And so for AFWorks, although the specifics are not as important as the general principle, what we as a team and what I as, and I'm going to put leaders in quote, and instead I'll go more with shepherd, because it was our team, they did all the work, and it was more my job just to shepherd and protect so that they could do their work as we all tried to build the environment and move to the right areas. But for us, having these are the 5 things we're doing. Nobody has time when you start out with a small team of 5 that grows to 12 and then grows to 30 over 3 years' time. Nobody has time to say, hey, I got to run this by Beam today. They don't have time. I don't have time. So we had much more of a centralized intent, decentralized execution. And if you were doing the following, if you were warfighter focused, if you were agile, if you were connecting people and accelerating results, you were doing it under an empowered structure that allowed you to build relationships, then you were doing your mission. There was not nearly the amount of traditional military command and control, which was different. And General Harris and Vice Chief Wilson, the number 2 general in the Air Force, were very kind about saying, we want open empowerment, go for it, Beam. So having leaders like that were very useful, because when you say you want to be agile, a traditional structure, and in some environments, it's very useful, but not in ours. A traditional structure might have a morning meeting. They'd call it a stand-up meeting for the quick, hey, what's everybody up to? And then an afternoon meeting. Hey, what did everybody do today? And you just sit there and you're like, there's a lot of meetings going on. So you ask yourself in your organization, how many meetings am I having where actual decisions are being made versus I can read the info brief on my own time? A contrast for AFWorks, when we first started, our national team that was dispersed across 9 different regions, we would meet every Tuesday and Thursday. And you know, when you're starting out, maybe you need more meetings so everybody meets each other. What are you doing? How's this all fit together? But by our 3rd year, when we were ranked number 16 in the world, you would find we had 1 monthly meeting where everybody came together for 90 minutes. And maybe more importantly within that, we said each of the 12 capability leaders, we originally started with 5, we had grown to 12, you gave 3 statements. What's the most important thing you've finished up? What's the most important thing you're doing this month? What's the most important thing you're doing next month? And that was it. Because most people don't want to know what everybody's doing. They don't want the book report. But if you say, hey, capability leader or division leader or product line leader, what's the most important thing? Number 1, the leader has to reflect on, yeah, what is the most important thing? And then they have to ask their team, what is our most important thing? Or they make a declaration and then the team says, that was our most important thing? So being able to turn our meetings into a moment for individual reflection, which kind of goes back to one of Ruth's major 4 points, always trying to learn and gaining more things. You can learn from yourself through reflection. Geez, Ruth, I wish I would have met you 3 years prior. You could have simplified my life. So we were a little bit messier.
I would have saved you a lot of time.
Yes, you would have. So then closing out our model on key things, we have 2 major themes as you go from the external environment, mission, and culture, and you work more internally. Our structure isn't that important for today's purposes, but what is generally out there that is useful is, with regard to our people, our strategy was all about, and here, Ruth, I'm gonna mirror and match what you've been saying. With our people, and Tina can vouch for this because she's one of my favorite stories on this one, our approach was, how close can we get to giving you maximum empowerment so that at least professionally, you can begin to climb towards Maslow's hierarchy and if not self-actualize, if not reach your full potential, at least professionally, here is our blunt working definition. You can use your strengths towards meaningful work that will leave you with a sense of fulfillment. I want to say it just one more time. I think it's important from a working definition, which is not as complex as Maslow, but it worked for us. When you can use your strengths for meaningful work, you can walk away with a sense of fulfillment. And again, we're driving innovation to secure our future against the dictatorships. So there was plenty of opportunity for meaningful work. I think Tina would vouch for this, that when I first met her on the transition discussion between her and the prior marketing director, Luis, she was like, hey, Beam, okay, so quarterly goals, what are we looking at here? Where do you want me to focus? And I was like, Tina, I am not the marketing expert. You are. Why don't you muck around for about 2 weeks and then you tell me what you think the plan is? You're the one who's got the strengths. Go. And the first response that I remember in my earphone, because we were talking, not VTCing, was, okay. And then within months, the Air Force has a portal where you can only put like 12 headlines on all of the 680,000 people. There were multiple times that Tina and her team had at least 2 stories out of the 12 that were on our Air Force Portal News website. Imagine that, 680,000 people, and Tina's getting 2 of our things on there. I mean, just phenomenal things that were occurring up there.
Wow.
And yeah, one other item with that, just to reaffirm the value of how we tried to target the triangle. So to you, Ruth, you say it's really important within the 4 items, intrinsic motivation. That's what we had. The government, you're not going to get stock options. But we had military and government people who were interested in preserving America. With regard to fundamental practice, we got together at least quarterly and we reviewed our culture, our goals. We used the OKR, objectives and key reports. And for those of you who were on VTC tonight, we had what was called the Common Mind gatherings. Woo-hoo. Because just like the brain is divided into so many different sections, but together it creates the whole body. That was the AFWorks mantra during our startup years. We were the Common Mind group. And so lastly, one other key point. So if it's intrinsic motivation that Ruth has, I'm stealing from Ruth because she taught it well.
He's talking about my 4 elements of extreme high achievers.
Yeah.
That they all have in mind. They all have in common.
Mm-hmm. Intrinsic motivation. We practiced our fundamentals again and again with regard to our culture and other things through our OKRs. We were always learning, and we tried to share our learnings. If you type AFWorks book into your website browser, this may come up. Sometimes the links change, but if you want to see what our team was doing, as busy as we were in our 3rd year, we didn't stop, but people were so excited to share our story. We actually built out this book. So if you would like to see the AFWorks book with over 20 different authors, 100 different little mini stories and things that you can learn, you can go with that. And then lastly, with regard to work ethic, Sisyphus always comes to mind nicely with regard to the need to just keep pushing that rock up the hill and that persistence. And if I can conclude then by saying what was driving us, in my mind, is one of the shepherds, President Calvin Coolidge, sometimes known as Silent Cal. Famously, from one of his dinner parties, the guy next to him taps him on the shoulder and says, Mr. President, the guy next to me bet $50 that I could get you to say more than 2 words. President Coolidge turns to him. You lose. Right? And this is Silent Cal, right? I mean, stoic. If he's going to say it, it matters. And if it's been a while since you've looked it up, you can look it up, but it's about 68 words, and I may miss a word here, but he essentially said this: nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius? It's almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has and always will solve the problems of the human race. So with that, Ruth, that's kind of an overview of what was driving us and the formal model that was setting it up. There's no such thing as guaranteed success in innovation, but there are probably ways to stack the odds, and that's how we tried to do it.
I'm not usually speechless, but this was pretty incredible. I don't know if you recognize that what you actually built was actually built on some of the fundamental adult learning theories of Malcolm Knowles, which is, if you look up, so when we talk about pedagogy is for children, andragogy is for adults. And it was started by Malcolm Knowles. He had 4 theories. He later expanded it to 6. But one of them, a few of them is, if adults understand the purpose of what they're doing and they see it, they understand how relevant it is and how relevant it is to themselves, they're going to be all in. And it sounds like that is the culture that was built at AFWorks. And that's why you were able to get so much innovation and so much buy-in. And the fact that you were able to do that with, it sounded like some sort of work-life cadence where people were happy to come in. They came in creative every single day. We do need to talk about a little bit about some of the things that you did, which I understand, but it may not be common to a lot of other people, especially those of us from academia and even some corporate. Those stand-up meetings might be a foreign concept. Oh. So you might just want to explain what the stand-up meetings are, why that's important, and your focus on not having meetings.
Oh, okay, sure. So the downside, with the best of intentions, there are a lot of military and still government members who say, let's all get together at 8 a.m. every day. And in theory, you stand up, even though people sit down. You stand up because the idea is to discourage people from talking too long, because then your legs get tired and you're like, okay, I need to get to my point quicker. So it's called a stand-up meeting. So people are like, hey, the longer you talk, the longer we have to stand here. But there are too many organizations. I don't want to give a percentage. There are too many organizations where the leader comes in, and even if they get in at 7, at 8 o'clock, everybody has to stop what they're doing because we're going to have a stand-up meeting. All right, report, person 1, report, person 2. Really? Did you need that every morning? And then in the afternoon, report, person 1, report, person 2. And so these stand-up meetings are just crushing it. And it's like, do you want to get something done, or do you want to hold a meeting? So again, very fortunate that both the Vice Chief of Staff, who was the number 2 general in the Air Force, I had to report to him every month. And so there were ways, back to Devin's question of when you met resistance, what could you do? With the Vice Chief, as well as a 3-star general, Lieutenant General Harris, being able to say, I understand, person who wants to do well with America's taxpayer dollars. Are you looking for a waiver? What do I need to tell my 3-star or my 4-star general to say, in order to make this happen, I need X? Because they can get on the phone with much more power than a GS-15 colonel equivalent can. And I just need to tell them why you are held up. And then many times, well, Beam, if I look at it, we could probably waive it this way or that way, So there are sometimes you need that senior leader. You don't want to name drop, but sometimes that's your big stick that you have to come in with.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And I also love something that you reference, because you called yourself a shepherd. And you gave a reference in the book. What if you had a big group of cattle? Could you confine them to a certain space, right? Because they'd be locking horns if they did that all the time. And you actually said the talent in the room was like the cattle. Why confine them? Why micromanage them? Wow. That's enlightening. It's also so obvious and so rarely done. Tell me about how you understood to do that and how you did that.
So JJ, as Zen Jen, from all of our discussions, we used to swap koans and stuff like that. But one of them was, how do you control a large herd? And the answer was, give it a lot of space, as you said, Ruth, because otherwise the horns are going to butt together. Well, how do you control a large group of talent? You don't. And I've listened to when Bruce has talked earlier about the modern day Western language might be, I try not to micromanage, right? Or from Lao Tzu, the idea that when the great leader's work is done, the leader will say, we did it ourselves, or the people will say, we did it ourselves. And so the idea of how do you control a large herd? When I say shepherd, it's because I didn't dictate, you will go over to quadrant 7 of the field today. But it was, hey, what are you doing? So if it's Tina or JJ who have just these wide open, there's an infinite number of possibilities every day of what they could pursue. So what's most important to you? How do you think it will, going back to our culture and our strategy and priorities, how will it benefit the warfighter to make us more agile, to accelerate results, empowering us and improving our relationships? And everybody could articulate it. Who are we to say why we shouldn't then use our strengths? So how do you control a large herd? The Western equivalent might be surround yourself with people smarter than you and then get out of their way. Or be a good shepherd, defend them from the wolves of bureaucracy. Sometimes throw your cane at the wolves by saying, I do have the vice chief behind me, or I have Lieutenant General Harris behind me. Do they need to come in and intervene on this? And so many wolves will disperse. Not every wolf.
I love that. So you left after 3 years.
Yes, ma'am.
So you need to tell us why you left and what you're doing now. And then JJ and Tina, we want the dirt. So prep for that.
He already threw me under the bus. I will reciprocate.
Yes, I've got plenty to add too, because he's glossing over some of it. And I just want to touch on one thing real quick. One of the reasons our team was so incredibly successful was that Beam gave us the space to be that. When we had meetings, the meetings were massively productive. Everybody was engaged. Everybody felt like they had something to contribute. It wasn't just talk for talk's sake, but it was a celebration. And it felt like a family more than a team. But one thing that really impressed me was Beam was literally the guy in Emerald City, behind the curtain, pulling all the levers, madly keeping us, on track and making sure that nothing got in our way. And he just let us run. And we could go and see and do and talk to whoever we needed to talk to. And that's why we got that ranking by Fast Company, because we had the bold talent with the right backing and the right vision to go out and be creative and have those creative collisions with whoever we needed to. That doesn't happen often.
Creative collisions. I love that term. Creative collisions. I love it. You're going to give us dirt on Beam in a moment, but Beam, you left after 3 years.
Yes. Okay.
Explain why, because those of us not in the military would not understand why you would leave when things were so great. So explain that and what you're doing now.
To the best of my business analogy comparisons, I would say that our startup company had performed so well that maybe like Excel being bought out by Microsoft and added to Microsoft, we had now gone, and in the course of 3 years, we had connected over 60,000 members of military, business, and research. We had started over 70 volunteer. We weren't given the resources. People were so fired up to connect and build it. Over 70 volunteer innovation offices at 70 bases across our Air Force, across the globe. We had become so powerful and useful that other members of the larger bureaucracy were like, I want that. And so they had some other projects that were useful, and they combined all of us into, I think we'll call it, if we were AFWorks startup years, AFWorks 2.0 may now be at 5 or 6 distinct organizations. But the beautiful thing, if we were merged and acquired, and it was all thrown together, instead of them calling it Air Force Innovations or anything like that, they kept our brand name, which was a real compliment because we were not the highest ranking organization as they did all of these mergers. So at the end of 3 years, just as we were getting our world ranking, they said, we're going to grow this out and we're going to throw in more people and we're going to change the structure and stuff. So it was time to, like Cincinnatus of old, it was time to lay down the leadership sword, go back and plow my fields because they had somewhere where they wanted to take it. AFWorks is still doing great stuff out there in a little different way, a little different form, but making good things happen. And I have been in the Vice Chief Strategic Studies group for this year. one of my major projects, which was super cool, was working with the US, UK, and French Air Forces on human-machine teaming and how we can best prepare to continue the integration and advancement of that for our air forces. So after this, probably the private sector. My final days in the Air Force are actually Friday the 13th of August.
Seriously?
Seriously, which funnier still, sometimes the universe opens up and answers. That is 6 years to the date of Friday, August 14th, when I retired from the military. And so a season has come upon Beam where it's like, I accept that it is, I have done my duty within my government and I'm moving on, Ruth.
And what are you moving on to?
I will be offering where I can to be helpful using my LLC of Escape the Cave. And there are different businesses that I believe will be offering me subcontracting opportunities as well as some individual coaching that I offer to individuals.
Wonderful. And what kind of coaching? Who do you do the coaching for?
It is much more personal oriented because it starts with Maslow's hierarchy and then it goes into objective versus subjective reality and the different things that might be driving us. So yeah, human performance and finding fulfillment in life by, again, the blunt definition of understanding your strengths so that you can apply them to meaningful work and walk away feeling fulfilled and happy. But the standing joke of that from Aristotle, when are you actually happy? Only in the final second before death, because you could always go bankrupt. There, massive accidents could happen to your family. So is anybody ever truly happy? So that's its own fun tale, but we joke about that later.
Oh, now we have just a few minutes left. JJ, give us some dirt. Give us some dirt on Beam.
So when I first met Beam, I was still at Special Operations Command, and he came down, and I didn't know who he was. I was working for SoftWorks, which was one of the original innovation hubs in the military at the time, now under Secretary Gertz. And they said, hey, this guy from the Pentagon's here, and he wants to learn how to do innovation, and he wants to build a hub like this up in DC. Do you want to talk to him? I said, no, I don't want to talk to him. He's from the Pentagon. Oh my gosh, no. And so I'm thinking automatically bureaucratic. He's not going to get it. And so finally, Carrie Klein, who is one of our innovators at SoftWorks, said, come here, you got to meet this guy. And so I met Beam and we hit it off immediately on Stoicism, a variety of philosophies, Buddhism. And we started talking and we started kind of brainstorming on what innovation would look like for the Air Force. And he had some incredible ideas. And what I really liked about the way he was thinking was he was putting the people first and making sure that the people had the resources that they need, the support they need, and most importantly, the access that they needed to do their daily job with the proper work-life balance and the right amount of encouragement, and not to the point where it was pushing people too far. It was perfectly balanced. It wasn't we've got to ask for permission. It was go out and do great things and then come back and I want to hear all about them. And so it was very much a partnership. It was very much a tribe. It was very much a family. And Beam won't tell you any of this because he's very humble. But the lessons that he would impart to us when we did our monthly meetings were absolutely the highlight of every month, because he would infuse it with philosophy. He would share some of his life lessons, or he would share recent experiences and tie them into the vision that he had for AFWorks, where he wanted to see us go. And then he encouraged all of us to bring our visions, our hopes, our dreams into that picture too. So it was very synergistic. It was a very open environment. It was very empathetic, very creative, and just one of the best teams that I've had an opportunity to be a part of. And while I was excited for him when he got the promotion going up to the strategic studies group, it broke all of our hearts because he's just amazing. And so having the opportunity to learn from somebody like that, to partner with somebody like that, was just tremendous. So I'm really excited for his opportunities in the private sector, and for all of the people that are going to benefit from his knowledge, his ability to teach and mentor the way he does. And I definitely want to get him involved with the mentor project too, once he gets settled in Michigan. But he's got some great things coming up for individuals and for organizations alike. So I know this is not the end. This is not all that we're going to hear of what Beam's about to do. and what he's about to unleash in a very positive manner upon the world. So I'm excited to see where he goes next.
I'm excited to hear this, and I could say this is the we've been emailing, Beam and I, for months, emailing and texting, and it's very obvious that he understands how the Venn diagram works and how to overlay different people's work so that it makes sense, how their work makes sense to them. So I found that fascinating. So I think the civilian world is going to be very lucky to get more of his work.
He definitely gets people. He really does. And that was something that impressed me as well. Most people don't understand the job that I do as a super connector. And it's hard to place that into a tangible, accessible way, a metric that registers, especially for the government. But he got it right away. He saw the value, and he encouraged me to go out and to continue to grow our ecosystems, to network, to scout and vet tech where I saw the need. And then also, not just on behalf of the Air Force, but all of the services, our allied partners and our interagency partners, which then reaped massive returns for us because now we're collaborating across these spaces. So he provided the digital and physical space for those creative collisions that happened. It was pretty cool.
Beautiful. Creative collisions. There comes that phrase again. I love it. Tina, I want the dirt.
You know what? And you want dirt? I can't give you any.
$100 does a lot of good right before the show. One quick little EFT transfer. Nobody.
No, literally everything that JJ just said is spot on. And Beam had mentioned it when I know, look at him rolling his eyes. He's so humble about it. But he had mentioned it too earlier when I first came on board and was working with him inside the military. Like, okay, what are my marching orders? What am I supposed to do? Where are my lanes? He's like, there are no lanes. Like, you are the expert. Go do what you do. You're the authority in this. And it was an amazing opportunity to really dive in to my craft and work with my team to say, how do we do this? Right? How do we do this differently? And when he said, there were 12 stories scrolling across the portal, and AFWorks got to the point where we were always 2 or 3 of them, it was because we were telling the story of the airmen who were flocking to this mission, who wanted to be a part of what Beam had created. And it is that empowerment. We created it, I know, but you started it. So it really is that empowerment.
He uses the word we a lot. He uses the word we a lot.
And I just want to do
I
already did it, but his book. If you're interested
you got it too?
in finding out more, yep. If you're interested in finding out more.
JJ, where's yours? Well, the cool kids have it.
I got my
except for Beam. Yes, mine is signed. I got swag too.
Nice.
Yep. Nice. Yep. All right, guys, we are out of time, and we can go on for a long time. And I have to tell you, you just saw a glimpse of some of the graphics that are in the book, which I really think you should take a closer look at, because they're some of the best ones I have ever seen to crystallize the point so beautifully. So go take a look at that. So everyone, tell us where we can find you and hear more about you. You guys all know about Beam. You know where to get the book. You know the whole story of AFWorks. Dr. Bruce Wiley, kick it off when you're not letting dogs out. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I don't have the book yet, but I do have some trail mix. So I can be found if you Google Bruce Wiley, or my website is brucewiley.com. If you want to read my stuff on Forbes, you can Google Bruce Wiley Forbes. And my social Twitter is at Bruce_Y_Lee.
Love it. Do we have a word for Bruce?
I think creative collisions. I like that.
Yes.
Whoa, okay. Bruce.
And I have to say, I'm impressed by the fact that you can quote like Calvin Coolidge. I can't pull out quotes like that. I can quote things like, oops, I did it again, and things like that.
Oh my goodness. All right, creative collisions. We want that word in a future article.
Okay.
All right. Janice Lintz. When you're not fighting with the Pentagon, where do we find you?
You can find me at janicelins.com and my advocacy work, and hearingaccess.com for my consulting work.
Thank you.
I wasn't fighting. No, they were actually very supportive. The Pentagon was amazing.
They were the
There's incredible
supportive
people.
ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what? They got it. You know what? The VA is the largest purchaser of hearing aids in the country. So for the Pentagon, this was an obvious thing. They didn't understand why a museum would not provide hearing access. It was a no-brainer. It really was. It was one of my easy projects, was working with the Pentagon.
Wow.
It would be not something you would usually hear, right?
I'm hearing good stuff now.
That's wonderful.
Our newest mentor on the Mentor Project, but longtime friend, Devin Harris.
Yay. Easy. Devon at devonharris.com. Well, my website is devonharris.com. Twitter, Instagram at Keep On Pushing 88. And of course, now at the Mentor Project.
And I will, first of all, welcome to the Cool Kids table.
Indeed.
I will say his Instagram and the YouTube, the podcast he has are some of the most inspirational and motivational that I've ever seen. So definitely check that out.
Thank you.
Tina.
Hi, yes, you can find me on LinkedIn at TP Sunshine or at my company website, leadoutsidethelines.com.
Beautiful. Thank you. JJ Snow.
Of course, you can find me at the Amazing Mentor Project. I'm the CTO there, and then also on Facebook, or not Facebook, on LinkedIn at JJ Snow.
And you actually put some really great content out there, really great articles that you should read. So definitely connect
Science and tech is my thing.
You speak geek. Love
In
it.
a way that we can all understand.
Yes, she translates it. Beam, where can people find you?
I can be found in the land of LinkedIn, just Brian E.A. Beam Mao. Or I want to also conclude, I guess, by giving thanks to Bruce Y. Lee for helping us get through the dog days of summer with a little bit of humor. So many layers.
Come, Brian.
If I may make one final request, sir, a great word of the week might be eudaimonia, because again, this was the Greeks' approach to how to have that fulfilling, happy life. If you can work either eudaimonic or eudaimonia into one of your writings, that would be quite awesome, good sir.
I'm just happy when someone could put the word penultimate. That's my favorite word.
Except most people use it wrong. Penultimate. Most people use penultimate wrong.
Really?
Yeah. It's not what the definition you think it is, and it's regularly used incorrectly.
Okay, so now before I introduce myself or tell people where to find me, you have to tell me the right way to use it.
Yeah, when you look at it up, you'll be surprised. It's not what most people usually. It's the correct word is ultimate, but it's usually used incorrectly. And I know this because someone else corrected me. By the way, I mean this is not like my brilliant. I am the worst grammarian, and a friend who is an incredible grammarian corrected me, and so this is how I know this.
So penultimate frisbee is not a thing that you should join.
Ha ha ha! Nope. All right, everyone. Behind the scenes, we have Dr. Debbie Heiser, who makes all of us look gorgeous, and she's the one pulling the strings behind the Iron Curtain. She is the CEO of the Mentor Project, brought us all together. I am Dr. Ruth Gotian. I am your host. Tomorrow and every Tuesday, there will be articles in my Forbes column, so just look that up. And also Friday, there's a bonus article because I'm an Olympics junkie, and Friday are the opening ceremonies. So I interviewed about 5 summer Olympians, Devin, that's why I didn't catch you, about what it was like to step on the opening ceremonies, what that was like, and what's life like in the Olympic Village. So if you want the inside look, that's Friday. Tomorrow, it's about how to be an amazing mentee, the one that everybody wants. If you want, you can follow me at ruthgotian.com. All the social media is just my name, Ruth Gotian. And we are so excited. If you are listening to the Audible, which comes out a few days after this, it comes out on Sundays, do us a favor, subscribe. so that other people can find us. And if you can leave us a rating and review, that would really help as well. So excited. We will see you next week. We have an incredible guest who's going to talk about college admissions. We will see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.